There's some places you can go to in New York City where you forget about the rioting lunatics, the crazy politics. I've got the microphone in wind protection mode. Might sound a little better like that. But today we have election day from hell. People remember that Elmo meme where Elmo is in hell? Now we've got Zoran Muppetami in hell. We're all about to be in hell. It's terrible. Look, it's not just Zoran. Obviously, he's an idiot. People remember the video where I spoke to him long ago. Oh no, already poor signal. I can't believe it. Hopefully we'll get to better signal here soon. Let me make sure we're not, I got all this technology to not lose the signal, and it's already a poor signal in the middle of Central Park. What a disgrace. Are we live? I hope so. People remember I had that conversation with Zoran Muppetami. I should have applied to run for mayor at that moment. That would have been at least better than what we've got right now. I mean, look, I feel like that guy in the picture jumping out of the window on 9/11, not to make light of it, and I'm not making fun of it, but think of what a dire situation you must be facing to think that going out the window on the 98th floor of the World Trade Center is your better option. I guess that must be instinct that hopefully most of us all day. Mr. Lamore. Yeah, well, right. There's buildings in New York City now. It's funny, I have some photos. I mean, I've got some photos I've taken around New York. Historic stuff now, 30 years. And I mean, most of the people voting today probably weren't even alive. Has that kid got a violin in there? That's maybe a wind instrument. That's an It's a beautiful day. You know, election from hell. Put that out of your mind. But yeah, I mean, I was a little disappointed in Curtis. I asked him a bunch of times to come on the show, and he like mildly entertained it, but never followed up.
Well, the other thing I feel like.
Whatever. I mean, I guess I'll still vote for him, but I don't know. People, it's hard to decide. People say, oh, a vote for Curtis is a vote for Mamdani. But a vote for Cuomo is also like voting for someone who we already know is an absolute loser. So, again, just like that guy jumping out the window on 9/11, do we face the fire or, 12 more seconds of fresh air before you go splat? How did we get here? New York City, all these people, and these three guys are the best candidates we could have for mayor. I mean, I guess I shouldn't complain. I didn't run. I don't know. I mean, I think I could do better than any of the three of them, but I don't think anybody, I'm not well known enough to be voted for. I'll tell you who I see maybe positioning himself to run for mayor, who I'd vote for over any of these three guys, Brandon Strzok. He's kind of done a better campaign. See, I don't understand why Curtis wouldn't connect with him. I guess they don't agree on too many things. But the only problem I had with Brandon's campaign was that he was just sort of saying, don't vote for Mamdani, which I agree with, but short of Brandon himself running or getting together with some particular candidate, what are you doing? You're telling people not to vote for Mamdani, and then so who do we vote for? Curtis or Andrew Cuomo. And then the other thing is we have all of these, Poly Market and all of these, I guess, what are they? Betting markets saying 94% chance that Zoran is going to win. I don't know, that's nonsense. People have rightly raised the point of Hillary. Yeah, Karen says vote for Curtis. I'm going to go downtown. I'm up here in Central Park right now. I'm going to go down and vote. I think Curtis has not run an excellent campaign. He needed more money behind it and more television appearances and see poor connection again. Why don't we get a better connection in Central? City is falling apart. City is falling apart. We need city-run supermarkets. In fact, I think for 1 year, and if you can do that, then you can. They've pointed out he was a pretty big disaster, wasn't he? Already lost the connection. Let's see if we can get it back here. Let's go down this way. So we got to improve best city in the world. You know what? It's deteriorated over the last 30 years to a horrible extent. It's like a hot chick in high school who you run into in a restaurant and she's fat as hell. And you're like, hey, what the hell happened? How'd you let that go? Poor connection. You go to like Seoul. I was in Seoul, South Korea, maybe 15 years ago. And it was the first time I. And here we are, 2000, with an network provider available. Oh wait, new e-bike law? What is it? Speed limit 15 miles an hour. Oh yeah. Again, I mean, that's not what the problem is. To that sidewalk. A lot of people talk about that. It was even a joke on Saturday Night Live. And I see it saying recover broadcast. People are going to say, oh, signal, how come other people are able to do it? It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I constantly am having cutting edge technology on this that's supposed to make it work. But somebody says they think I'm being throttled. And it's saying poor connection of multi-G network. So I don't know why this would be happening. It's arbitrarily picking winners and losers, whatever it might be. Remember when Trump said the Emmys are rigged? Guess what? He was correct. It turned out in 2018 when Adam Sharp came in there, the first thing he had to do was bring in some outside auditing firm which determined, oh yeah, they're rigged. The Emmys were in fact rigged. Here, this is a beautiful spot in Central Park. I'm actually glad to be here today. It's a beautiful day. Pathetic that we don't have a better network over here. Crazy. How far do I have to walk to get to a decent network? This thing is showing 4 bars. It should be working. It should be working. I just said test all my 3D cameras over here. Oh, now see, there are boats. Where have those paddle boats? Looks like I'm not getting signal over here, so I bet maybe moving will get me. Poor connection, reconnecting. Eyes on this so we don't lose the. Again, I do see other people. I'll post sponsors and subscribe stuff. crowdsource the truth. crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and on not working. Maddening. In addition to being election day from hell, has successfully, along with a counter thesis to about Charlie Kirk. Interesting, I've been thinking about it quite a bit. Jam up that evidence bounty. Isn't that interesting? Okay, it should be working now. There's strong signal here. I don't know why it's giving me this problem. I got all phones kicking. Then people will say, no, don't use that bonding link aggregating thing. But you see, when I didn't use it, then it definitely cut off. It should be working well. What I was saying is we seem to be in this winners and losers, whether it's Zoran Mamdani. Remember that Curtis said somebody was trying to give him. I mean, I believe him. I'm sure that happened, at least it sounds plausible. And it's just like somebody comes along and decides saying some stupid nonsense about Charlie Kirk while simultaneously mounting an effort to crush what I'm doing, and it seems to be the same people. What are you talking about, Jason? Well, I'm talking about all these people who joined together to try to gang up on the evidence bounty. And I mean, they either can't read or they're too connection again, reconnecting. So I might have to stay on this. But because it wasn't just get the evidence. I was so adamant, 30 frames per second. That video that showed now but I've been and those guys just say, I mean, I'm all over. Me as well. And perhaps that even retweet talking about he could Zoran that combines them all and selects the strongest signal, and none of that is working. So either it's not technically feasible to walk around doing an under 3 megabit per second video broadcast in New York City, which is what I'm saying is pathetic. We should have more network bandwidth in 2025. Or someone is deliberately doing something to stop these broadcasts. I don't know which it is. I appreciate the people who are sticking around and watching, but please don't give me unsolicited technical support. It's super annoying and definitely won't help. The question is, how the hell has Elon Musk not seen the video? I see him boosting other videos. He knows he's getting sued. How does he not know that the FBI was all up in Twitter when I went there to tell him? Let's look at this Zoran Mamdani encounter for a moment. You're running for mayor?
Yes, I can hear it.
Isn't this not First Amendment activity, shutting down a business 3 weeks in a row? How many New York City businesses could tolerate to close their location 3 weeks in a row? This is an economic attack on Tesla. How can you sanction this? You will never be mayor. This is not the use of the First Amendment. This is, step away from me. Don't advance towards me like that. Yeah, you did. You just came up to me in a threatening manner and you're advancing towards me. Back up. See, this guy doesn't know anything about what the First Amendment is or isn't. And he says, oh, this is the First Amendment. No, the First Amendment would be standing in some neutral location like the park or maybe Columbus Circle up here and having a rally, having a speech where he says, hey, I hate billionaires like Elon Musk. You can say that. You're free to hate people, by the way. Hate speech is First Amendment activity. See, that's the craziest thing, is that so many of these types of people want to twist what is and isn't the First Amendment. You're allowed to hate people, and you're allowed to tell other people that you hate them. You're not allowed to incite violence against them because you hate them. You're not allowed to tell people to go burn down Teslas because you hate Elon Musk. You're not allowed to shut down the business with a mob by intimidating their customers and making it so that nobody wants to go in there. The question I was asking him is, if somebody went to one of his, family members' businesses and said, oh, I don't like Zoran Mamdani, so we're gonna crowd the doorway and shout down anybody who wants to try to go in there and, buy rice to eat with their dirty fingers. That's not the First Amendment. It's an attack on the business, just like people attack me on Elon Musk's Twitter platform. Tortious activity, things like defamation, deliberately spreading lies about people, also not First Amendment activity. You're not allowed to make things up to smear people. Now, again, it's who's going to enforce that? You got to bring a lawsuit. It's big and complicated. Elon Musk could do that. He should have done that to protect the customers at Tesla and to protect commerce in New York City from a ridiculous communist like Zoran Mamdani. And now he's endorsed Cuomo. That's pretty insane. So has Trump. That is insane. Cuomo has already proven he's going to destroy the city. Look, that's the strongest reason to vote for Sliwa, is that he's the one guy out of the three who doesn't come out right and say, here's my plan to destroy New York City. Curtis, I at least believe, loves New York and wants to do the right thing. The numbers are low, though. I don't know if Curtis can win. I greatly object to the notion of voting for somebody to prevent somebody else from winning. Like all these people are like, blame Curtis for if Mamdani wins. Why don't you blame Cuomo? He lost the primary and refused to listen to the people and leave the race. If it was just Curtis versus Mamdani, everybody's talking about Mamdani versus Cuomo, that he would win. But that's like saying Mike Tyson versus Jason would win. How did that become the contest? Shouldn't be. Now, what do we have going on here? It's a big tent. Oh, maybe this is something for Election Day? Oh no, it's got to be for the... Is this for the marathon?
Yes, it was.
They just had the New York City Marathon. Yeah, see, I should have remembered that. Now, I'll always remember when the New York City Marathon is, not because I'm a marathoner, but because It's, remember, November 1st, 2022, I was assaulted outside of Twitter when I went there to tell Elon Musk that the FBI had illegally seized control of Twitter, something that Elon Musk has resisted. In fact, I've come to realize since then that, what do people think of that? Something weird about those sheep, no? Something, I don't know. The king's crown. Do we have any sheep in New York City? I guess maybe they're serving it in there. Something I've come to realize since then is that the Twitter files, I'm sure I've said this already, but it's worth mentioning again. The Twitter files were released basically as a limited hangout, kind of a firewall against what I was talking about, a limited hangout, you know? They want to give you something explosive, so people say, oh my God, the Twitter files. Elon Musk is such a free speech champion releasing this information, but yet he stopped short of actually releasing the information. Like, why haven't we had a trial of Adam Sharp, Valerie Caproni? These people are still up to no good, you know? We have all this stuff with Comey and Arctic Frost, and what's Comey's lawyer's name? Jim, who remembers Comey's lawyer's name? I'm forgetting it right now. Joe Hoft had an article about him talking about how he could have stopped 9/11, which Zoran Mamdani's aunt or whatever doesn't want to go on the subway because of 9/11. But Joe Hoft had this article that this guy, who remembers Comey's lawyer's name? That guy could have stopped 9/11. I think Joe Hoft is a nice guy, but I think he didn't quite have that story completely. I mean, the fact that he's covering it at all, is very good. But there's a lot in between the lines there, because he started talking about Valerie Caproni. Ask Dinesh D'Souza what? About sheep? He started talking about Valerie Caproni and Gregory Scarpa, who, if people don't know, Gregory Scarpa was a mafia informant for many, many years who was working with the FBI. And he's one of these, you know, he's like a lesser known Whitey Bulger, where the FBI, including, you know, Andrew Weissman and Valerie Caproni, were apparently letting this guy commit murders. Remember when I interviewed that guy, Lynn DeVecchio? He was a nice guy. Again, I think he didn't realize what they were doing, or maybe he did and he can't talk about it, but he was getting jammed up. You don't need a hotel. He was getting jammed up because the FBI tried to throw him under the bus, saying that he was working with the mafia to give him certain information to help the mafia kill people. And he said he was innocent. I believe him. I think it was Weissman and Caproni and all them who were giving all that information. And then you see Weissman has that 7 million or 9 million, whatever it is, that super expensive apartment that he got with the loan. Was it First Republic? A week before it went into FDIC receivership, and he bought the property from Jeffrey Epstein's unindicted criminal co-conspirator. How is all of this? I'm not saying the Epstein list isn't important, but nobody's paying attention to any of this. There's so much crazy stuff that goes on. Now what's going on here? We have a line of these bikes. This is the craziest of crazy bikes on the sidewalk infractions. I don't know. I don't think there's any chance I could have won, but I really should have run for mayor. I would have run on the zero tolerance for bullshit policy. Riding a bicycle on a sidewalk would have become a major offense, because it's like that broken windows policing, right? If you let people know that the cops aren't messing around, you know, you stop people who are doing these petty crimes, jumping the turnstile in the subway. I would have started with the NYPD traffic cops. There's so much waste, and the fat people working in the park. I would have said, okay, first of all, if you're going to wear a badge and carry a gun in New York City, there's going to be pretty stringent physical fitness requirements. You're going to need to be able to run at least a mile without passing out and dying, because if you can't do that, you're not sufficiently physically fit to carry a gun and decide who's getting shot with it. And, you know, Eric Sanders, former NYPD and current lawyer of Sal Greco, he said that he objected to the removal of these physical fitness requirements. He also pointed out this is not just me discriminating against physically unfit people. He said that there were statistics about certain violent criminals saying they did whatever kind of assault on the cops because they looked at the 5'1" fat female cop and decided I could take this person. Whereas if you're 5'10" or taller and physically fit, I mean, I don't know what the requirements are for the cops, but you know what I'm saying. When somebody feels like, ooh, you know what? These people are gonna kick my ass. There was that guy Powlett, who I was speaking to outside of the 10th precinct. The dude was gigantic. You'd be an idiot to mess with him. He'd crush you with his fist. Here's Trump, whatever, International Hotel. This gets less attention than Trump Plaza because he never lived in there, as far as I know. Also, I don't know if it's exactly a hotel. I guess it must be, but I think people live in there. I don't know. And you know, really it was Trump who kind of transformed the city. People were talking about these big, gigantic buildings over there. Those are residential buildings, as is this primarily. I mean, this is retail, residential, and office, which is even newer idea. But you know, when Trump built Trump Plaza in the 80s, people thought he was nuts. You didn't have high-end residential buildings, condos for millions of dollars in the middle of New York City. That was still a time when you had, you know, people manufacturing watches and having printing presses in buildings in the middle of New York City, something that you absolutely don't have now. I don't know, maybe this is old man crap lamenting what was going on 30 years ago, but it certainly seems like things are much worse, doesn't it? I don't remember quite so many people laying in the street miserable 30 years ago as we have now. So what will happen? We're going to get either Zoran, Andrew Cuomo, or Curtis. And will either of those three men improve New York City? Or are we just in a downward death spiral? I know what Charles's answer would be. He's already gone. And I know I've said this before, but it's also worth saying again. You know, Zoran Mamdani's whole idea that he's going to make New York City more affordable for families, I'm sorry, that's the wrong approach. That's not what it is supposed to be. It's literally like the Cadillac Cimarron or the McDonald's veggie burger. What I mean by that is certain things are a certain thing and you can't try to change them. When they tried to make the inexpensive Cadillac, nobody wanted it. All it did, the prowess of Cadillac overall, by giving you a cheaper, crappier one that nobody wanted. And then that made people think, well, maybe Cadillacs aren't so great. What you need to do is you need to elevate Cadillac, make it better. And that might mean it's more expensive, but then people want it. Got to work harder to get one. And they cost more money, they can be better. That's what New York City needs to be. It needs to be, if it's too expensive for you to live here, you got to come from another state or the outer boroughs or someplace else and work hard to start a unique business or be better at something than anybody else, do something that you can't do anywhere else, not to have city-run supermarkets. The city can't run a park. How is it going to run a supermarket? You know, I might get on board for that idea if every single thing about the city was the best run thing on earth. They can't even run an election. You know, we saw how they had Eric Adams, who's supposed to have dropped out. He's so stupid, he can't even drop out of an election properly. His name is still on the ballot. I think I forgot to finish this idea about the people who were trying to crush my evidence bounty. Today is November 4th. Nobody has presented a countermanding counter thesis explaining what those three dots are. They've just ignored what I've said. They didn't say no. That's not the way the Dolby patent works. It didn't say no. The Dolby patent doesn't prioritize radiometric values over temporal order of exposures. That is what it does. That does explain why those dots appear to be moving. They're not actually moving, remember. A video is an illusion, a sequence of still frames that create the illusion of motion through the persistence of vision. So if something in the technology presents data from a frame temporally out of order, meaning this radiometric, this brighter light value is important for the exposure mapping that we're doing to create a radiance map for a high dynamic range video, which the patent tells you uses a normal 30 frame per second video, dog with shoes, plus additional exposures. Where is it getting those additional exposures? From the 240 hertz stream of video data that the phone is collecting. So those are frames. It was that idiot Tyler, what's his last name? That guy got on the phone with me yelling for an hour and 40 minutes. I know he's connected in some way to Blake. Right, I was talking about Elon Musk choosing winners and losers. I think there's almost no way he hasn't seen that Zoran Mamdani video. 3 million people have seen it. I'm yelling right at Zoran about him attacking Tesla. He didn't like. There's a reason. He's not interested in knowing that the FBI has illegally infiltrated Twitter right before he's about to buy it. I think there's a reason, and I think it's the same reason. We never heard the explanation. Large. All heard from, what the hell is this? They don't want some idiot like me to rise and fall on the strength of my ideas or my talent or anything like that. And I think it all ties together. I think it ties to these guys who are messing with the Charlie Kirk evidence, Blake, Tyler, that guy Ryan Mata. What a loser he is, you know? I found out he was bankrupt in 2011 or something like that. Look, it happens. I have friends who have been through bankruptcy. But I don't know, does that make him a pillar of integrity? Or does it seem like maybe every website he has is about Bitcoin and every kind of financial grab you can think of? I'm here trying to, frankly, swim against the tide, share this kind of information with people. All I'm saying is, please become a sponsor if you like the information. Subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. It's only $5 a month. Even, you know, they sent me an email saying, hey, it's been, 800 and some odd something days since you've ever increased the price of a tier of sponsorship. Why don't you increase it? And I said, I'm no economist, but I think when you make things more expensive, less people want to buy it. Remember, I was initially trying to make these sponsorships $2 a month so that as many people as possible could sponsor. That worked. There were a lot more sponsors at $2, but what I quickly figured out was there were too many services that I needed to pay, and when that many people were watching the videos, $2 a month didn't cover it. So the economics didn't work out. $5 a month, it works, but I really need more people to sponsor the show. And these guys are dead set on getting you not to sponsor the show. See, this is what I mean. This guy, Ryan, who had a bankruptcy in 2011 and is essentially, you know, just like George's brother, this guy's kind of like judgment proof. So he's the perfect guy to involve in offensive lawfare operations because nobody wants to sue that loser. Yet at the same time, he says he's got video editors working for him full time. How does he do that? I don't know. But he's like a huckster, constantly pushing some kind of nonsense. Why hasn't TPUSA released their videos, somebody? That's a good question. I don't know. See, and that's the thing. Ryan was at the tip of the spear on a lot of conclusions about who did what before we really had strong evidence. And I think the people within TPUSA are the most suspicious. The security guards, that guy who took the memory out of the camera. To be fair, he did mention that. But my point is, he was very big on promoting Blake and lying about me, telling everybody, oh, go follow Blake. And if you look at how that worked out, strictly by the numbers, Blake went from a very, very small account on Twitter to now over 30,000 in about a month. That can take a year or more to do organically. So again, I look at this inorganic growth, who Elon Musk decides to boost or not. Remember when I was outside Madison Square Garden having words with Jack Posobiec, who I thought was an all right guy before that encounter. He seemed to be on his way inside to meet with that I was getting in the way of that. Any Charlie, I think people like, maybe not specifically, but Hearst, Rothschilds, all these big billionaires. Uh-oh, I'm frozen. What happened? We're frozen. Can we get the video back? Let's see what happens if we disconnect this. Let's take a station break for a moment and try and get that camera back. Input. Is it going to work? Oh, I think so. Nice. Saved it. Good. I think there are people, billionaire type people, international mogul type people, Hearst, Musk, Zuckerberg, Gates, the list goes on and on, Rothschilds. They want us all fighting, you know? Nazis versus Jews, black versus white, Israel versus Palestine. And they just want to stoke the flames of those fights. They want to get me into those fights. Isn't that what Tyler did? Here's a new Whole Foods, or at least one I didn't know about. They just want to stoke both sides of the fight. Make hatred reign, Black Lives Matter, all that stuff. You know, that's what Zoran Mamdani is all about. Stoking those flames. That was never an issue. When he was 8, honestly, I don't remember anybody ever. I mean, when I was in high school, I had Muslim friends, and we never even thought about it or talked about it. Really. If you think about it, 9/11 actually was a really polarizing event. And, you know, there's, people saw I did that video with Charles with Ron Chapman. Do people remember that video? He's a smart lawyer. I like Ron Chapman. He shared a lot of good information with us. Real bring. Real. I mean, I'm getting uninterrupted on subscribestar.com and patreon.com. Yeah, I see it says poor connection, reconnecting, but this thing says 4 bars of 5G, so what the hell? Let's see. We'll put it on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. For people who follow me on X, you also get access to uninterrupted posted and other sponsor exclusive content. Follow me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribe there. But yeah, they just seem to want to stoke division, polarize people over something, you know? My issue with Mandami is not that he's a Muslim. It's, first of all, we need to clearly distinguish something. Like I was just saying, I had friends in high school who were Muslim. They're not Islamists. That's an important difference. It's like the difference between somebody who is Jewish and somebody who is a Zionist. And by the way, I think in both of those camps, there's a lot of Muslims who say, yeah, I'm an Islamist because they like Islam, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the radicals in those political movements. It's actually an interesting parallel, right? Because, you know, being Muslim or being Jewish is potentially separate from being a Zionist or being an Islamist, but there's a lot of people who want to push the moderate people on both of those sides into one camp or another. And they do it by stoking hatred, you know? So that's really what that guy Tyler and Ryan, those guys are despicable because they're guilty of that, you know, stoking this polarization. I don't want to encourage people to watch this because I think it was a wreck, but when Tyler was trying to basically, you know, crap on the evidence bounty, ignore the terms and conditions, and just send a file that he thought satisfied it, and say, give me the money. You know, forget about, so what's going on here? They were drilling for oil here a while ago. He said, forget about the verification. This is verifiable evidence. Give me the money. He tricked me into participating in an X space that was supposed to be all about Dolby Vision HDR, MPEG HEVC, and the high 10 profile, and how HDR video gets encoded with MPEG. And he allowed in a bunch of anonymous guys who wanted to ask me about the USS Liberty and Benjamin Netanyahu and a bunch of things that I don't have particular knowledge or expertise in and wasn't the subject of the thing. And they became insulting and irate. And it was very unprofessional of Tyler. Oh, look at that. There's that Operation Mincemeat. David Hawkins would love that there's a Broadway show about Operation Mincemeat. Remember, that was the deception where they took a dead guy and put fake war plans in his jacket and then floated him ashore. Right, in World War II? That was the deception. Well, that's what we're being subjected to right now, Operation Mincemeat. So they're going to work really hard to put Zoran Mandami in there because he's part of this deception. I mean, it's obvious. I don't understand Elon Musk because on the one hand, he's complaining, saying, oh, the election, you know, we've got Mandami on the ballot twice. We've got Eric Adams on the ballot. They're not checking people's ID. Well, you know, part of the problem is if you allow Twitter to be used as a social engineering platform, if you allow X to take over and deceive people into thinking it's free speech when it's actually a limited hangout social engineering platform, somebody says that X space was a train wreck. Obviously, that was his plan from the beginning, to trick me. Just like Operation Mincemeat, sticking plans in the dead guy and floating him ashore, you pretend it's one thing when it's actually another. The evidence bounty has worked out really well, and thanks to everybody. I think it ends at 11:59 p.m. tonight. Check the terms and conditions, but it's got to be, right? November 4th is today, so 11:59 p.m. Potentially somebody still has the opportunity to present a counter thesis that'll disprove what I'm saying. But how are they going to do that? Again, you'd have to prove. See, Tyler just thought presenting a 30 frame per second video would do it. And that's the issue with not understanding what you're reading or talking about. It said that you need to present evidence that disproves the theory, not just present the original evidence. He thought that because the video was shot at 30 frames per second and not 240 frames per second slow motion, that had disproven the theory. But in fact, he actually strengthened and sharpened the thesis because he proved that the video was shot in a 240 hertz. Look, we have a Running Man remake. Oh, it just went away. Running Man remake coming to movies. It was shot in another 240 hertz mode of the iPhone, the Dolby Vision HDR. So again, that really clarified in my mind why we saw those three dots, because they were the brightest elements in that sequence. Jesus, this guy's like throwing up and lurching around on the ground. Guy's crazy. But yeah, watch out for the vomit. That clarified where those dots came from. Because they were the brightest elements in the frame, the Dolby Vision HDR process would preserve them. And right, I was talking about this before. A video is not actually motion, it's a sequence of still frames that creates the illusion of motion by presenting you with still frames, and persistence of vision is what does that. When we start getting into these much more complicated computational photography features like Dolby Vision HDR that do a lot of things beyond just simulating motion, they're trying to create these really high dynamic range images and radiance maps. The patent tells you that it's storing these other exposures in addition to the 30 frames per second video. So that's more frames or elements from frames. You know, we want to get into the semantics of the words. The other thing is the guy was going crazy with not letting up. This movie was such a flop, Tron Ares. There was somebody who said she loved it and was upset that I said it was going to be a flop. I thought it actually looked cool and wanted to see it. I didn't even realize it flopped. Maybe they did a bad job of advertising it, or maybe movies are passé. Here's Microsoft. I thought they closed all the Microsoft stores. And here's another ad for Operation Mincemeat. But it's just clear to me that that's where those dots came from. The fact that the patent tells us that it's using these multiple exposures, and that the Apple marketing language tells us that, and that it's separately encoded in real time into this MPEG stream, and that we know that bidirectional temporal prediction is affected by all of this stuff. It's very clear to me. We only have 3 pictures of that dot, and this thing that's trying to decide which direction it's moving in can become confused. Nobody has, somebody said, oh, it's a bug. But there's no other bug in that sequence of frames that moves quite in that way, right directly towards the back of Charlie's head, right before something penetrates his neck and comes out the front. People saw that Range Day Bro did a video where he shot, I guess, was it a 5.56 or a 2.23? I don't know what all those numbers, you know, I've heard them. I'm not claiming to be a gun expert. Smaller than a 30-06 round. he fired. But still, as far as I understand, a supersonic rifle round, it still seemed to explode the neck of that ballistic gel dummy. Oh, there's a Plaid. Is that Elon Musk? I mean, obviously ballistic gel is not the same as a neck, but that looked like a hell of a lot more destruction on the neck to me than what we actually saw on Charlie Kirk. I remain convinced. I was thinking about doing a sponsor exclusive. I was showing a lot of the frames to ChatGPT. It's another deceptive thing that Tyler did, is that he took our recorded phone call, which I don't mind that he recorded it. I recorded it as well. But he took the transcript from it and he fed it into AI with the prompt, find all the deceptive statements in here, or all the false statements in here, or something like that. And I think most people realize that AI remains in its early stages, if not its infancy, and is prone to making mistakes. And it works in certain ways. It's not infallible. When you prompt it to find a false statement, it's going to search for something that has the highest probability of being false, and maybe even tell you that something is false when it isn't. And, you know, he treated that like it was some sort of finding in court. He didn't know what he was asking it for. And I told him after he presented me with that, I said, hey, Tyler, you know, the conversation that I have with you, a digital video novice and a human on the phone, is vastly different than the way I would prompt an AI for answers about this. So again, he wanted me to play his stupid game, and he's like, oh, well, how would you prompt it? Prompt it this way, prompt it that way. And the answer is the whole thing would be set up entirely differently. And you can't just, you know, take a contemporaneous and contentious phone call and ask whatever he wants to ask AI and then say that's the definitive answer about it. What I was doing the other day that was quite interesting is I gave it a sequence of images. And by the way, there's a lot of things that the AI doesn't even want to tell you about this, because it'll say things like, I can't give you information about whether something did or did not cause a fatal injury to an actual person. And then I would tell it, well, I just want to analyze the physics of this. Look at the shirt puffing out. I was asking it specifically if a 50 caliber round going 500 feet per second, and by the way, that's approximate. Another stupid idiot in this whole mix is Gary Melton, who's like, Jason thinks it was an air gun. You're talking about 75 joules and you need at least 200 to be fatal or whatever. Well, first of all, what Gary was talking about was like a 22 caliber, 100 grain round or something. What I'm talking about is they have 50 caliber 300 grain rounds that generate 200 plus joules of energy. And that absolutely by the way, I didn't know that until I listened to what Gary was saying. I looked up the type of gun that I think they're using, 50 caliber, with a muzzle velocity of 500 to higher, 500 to 800 feet per second. You can regulate these things. They have a little Allen key that you can turn that affects the air pressure, so you can kind of customize the muzzle velocity. So it's almost as if somebody who knows a lot about guns said, okay, we want to pretend we're shooting Charlie Kirk from the front. Maybe they didn't want this shot from the rear to come out the front of his neck at all. And if you asked somebody like Gary, he might tell you, well, 200 joules might be enough to kill him if you hit him in the back of the head, but it won't penetrate. And then that way you can say, oh, he was shot from the front, that's why there's no entry wound, because everybody agrees it's difficult to see an entry wound, and he'll be on the ground before anybody knows what's what. Clear him out of there. And then we'll have the coroner say that his spine stopped the bullet and it was a miracle. And then we'll have other channels say, oh, there are some times where deer or whatever can stop a 30-06 round. I don't know, that's all speculation, but the evidence seems to show that he was shot from behind. Here, we're gonna have a lot more of this with Zoran Mamdani selling food illegally from igloo coolers on the street. taking away money from restaurants and businesses trying to pay people, funding organized crime. People say, oh, they're just trying to earn a living. Well, so is a mugger. But there's a reason why we have laws. You pay taxes, I pay taxes. The IRS was all over me for a mistake by H&R Block. I had to pay a lot of money, and then H&R Block was like, oh, sorry. But it's like people are stealing millions, and then they're on me for $3,000. It's weird too, because it's almost like George's brother knew about that. He was on a tear for a little while calling me a tax cheat. I certainly didn't cheat on anything. And as soon as they brought it to my attention that there was an issue, I paid it. But it wasn't cheating, it was H&R Block making a mistake. What about all these people stealing millions and millions? Anyway, back to Charlie Kirk. This 50 caliber, 300 grain round, 306, I forget exactly what it was. But when I calculated it all in ChatGPT, it was saying it was like 230 something joules and absolutely could be fatal. It said that it was plausible that it could penetrate somebody's neck and come out the front with barely enough kinetic energy to rip a shirt. But obviously it says, I don't know, and you know, a bullet could do anything, and if it hit the spine, if it did this, if it did that. So there's a lot of unknowns there, but again, what I'm saying is scientifically derived based on evidence, and these guys all want to yell and shout and say a lot of nonsense. Nobody has come with a countermanding, equally scientific explanation that says, oh, this is impossible. You're disproven. So that was the purpose of the evidence bounty contest, was that, first of all, I was so confident in this hypothesis that I put up the evidence bounty. Here's a Fisker Ocean. I put up the evidence bounty because I was confident it was right. And what I really wanted was to get to the bottom of the evidence, which was presented in a very suspicious way. First is 20 frames per second, which I don't think people appreciate how unusual that was and how difficult it is to get to a 20 frame per second MPEG file with the high 10 profile. It's not just any piece of software that can do that. It was someone pretty sophisticated who did that, and why did they do it? I haven't checked DaVinci Resolve, but definitely Adobe Creative Suite can't do it. Adobe Premiere Pro, After Effects, Media Encoder, none of those can do it. They cannot do it. I tried. FFmpeg can do it. I think that's what was used. And again, that's, maybe Samir Masi did that. Maybe Zeb Boykin did that. Maybe somebody else did it. I don't know. But those guys all acted very suspiciously about it and got increasingly suspicious when I asked more questions. To me, that's kind of weird. A more normal reaction when I raise these questions, if you're a legitimate independent investigator, might be to say, hey, those are good questions. I'm also interested in learning the answers to that. What the hell is going on in here today? Is Zoran Mamdani going to do anything to improve that is Penn Station? Wretched this COVID was. Oh, docs now? Missed it. There was an ad there for a. They're trying to make it like a plane now. Poor connection. Side here before. This is a major train station. You would think there'd be good internet down thing we need to do to improve New York City. Better infrastructure, make sure it doesn't flood when it rains. You know, you start taxing rich people, they're going to leave. And they're going to take their businesses with them, they're going to take their employees with them, or make a lot of unemployed people. There's going to be less people to buy bagels and donuts and hot dogs and pizza. So these places are going to go out of business. Then you're going to have more retail space available, driving rent down, or making it more difficult for people to rent the existing spaces. And then it's just a death spiral for New York. That seems like a new elevator. See, this is a bar. This used to be a Thai store. Get your booze on. Is it even lunchtime? A lot of booze. Be the police, which would be conducive and criminality. As I talk, yeah, the evidence bounty. Had these two die. Because to appear out of order, making them look like they're moving away from the guy. It's amazing that sequence of events blew up everything with Cullen. Is Cullen back on Twitter? Nobody has seen him since. It's almost a month, 3 weeks. It's quite a vacation. I mean, if you earn your living on social media like I do, I don't think you can reasonably take 3 weeks off. Maybe he's making a lot more money than I am, but seems to produce a lot less videos about a much more narrow set of topics. Never know. Very strange, but I hope people will subscribe and sponsor on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and also by going to @JG_CSTT. So all of the people who did boost the bounty by going to crowdsourcethetruth.org, they would have read and agreed to the terms and conditions, which made it clear that it's another way to support Crowdsource the Truth. I mean, it got us to that original evidence, which again, those guys thought the evidence in and of itself disproved what I was saying because it was 30 frames per second, but it didn't. It revealed that I was on the right track, and as I said, it sharpened the hypothesis. Remember, then we had Chris Martinson, who lied. He lied to me on the phone. He said he was going to look at your stuff. To me, that meant he was going to review the videos that I had put out, which would have included the discovery with Zeb Boykin, where Zeb points out that, oh no, that can't be the bullet because it's moving in reverse. And within seconds, I said to him, wait a minute, I think that's an MPEG artifact. That's a video encoding artifact. Chris Martinson would have and should have known that prior to our debate, if he was being honest with me when he said he was going to watch my stuff. And the debate was the moment for him to say, no, I disagree, Jason, because that's not how MPEG works. That's not how Dolby HDR works. That was the moment for him to do it. Instead, what he did was, after he was embarrassed in the debate, most people watching, something like 69% of those from Owen Schroyer's audience who were polled, agreed that I won the debate. I think Chris Martinson was embarrassed in that debate, and he then went and produced a smear accusing me of being deceptive, and demanded that I give the money to Blake. Then, when I called Blake and he didn't answer, called to his office, he didn't answer. I called back, they said he's still not here. Then the receptionist at the office called me back and said, here's his cell phone number. Induced me to call him. Called him on the cell phone, he didn't answer. I said, that's strange. She just told me to call him on the cell phone. Called him again. I figured maybe he just left the office and I missed him, give him a minute to get into his car and get the Bluetooth going. Because when somebody's secretary calls you and says, oh, here's his cell phone, it implies to me that, oh, he's busy and he's on his way out, but he said he wants to talk to you, so call him on his cell phone. So then I called him a second time on the cell phone and he didn't answer. So then I called back to the office to say, hey, did you mean for me to call him right now on the cell phone? He then took that sequence of normal behavior and used it to represent that I was harassing him. Follow that again. Chris Martinson told me to call him. I called him. He wasn't there. I called back sometime later. He still wasn't there. And by the way, calling somebody's office and then they say he's not here and calling back later, that's normal. That's not harassment. You're calling a place of business to talk to a guy. Oh yeah, we also have people running for DA and stuff. But they basically, I mean, this is this type of scheming that George and his stupid brother do, to trick you into doing things and then use that, you know, sort of trick you into calling the Coast Guard to try to get you to tell the Coast Guard there's a dirty bomb and then try to use that to have the FBI prosecute you for calling in a bomb hoax. But they're not very good at pulling off their hoaxes. I keep thwarting them. And I think I did the same thing, essentially, with the evidence bounty. I got the evidence, but it didn't do what they wanted it to do. I'm like the mouse that keeps eating the cheese.
Yeah, yes, he grew up there. Yeah, he's getting his master's at Harvard.
Okay, tell him.
Trans people for Zoran or something. Well, anyway, it's a beautiful day in New York, except for it being the election from hell. I'm almost done with my walk. Anybody have any comments or insights they'd like to share? It's been low viewership, I guess, because of all the buffering. Sorry about that, folks. Somebody says, what do you need a suit for, Charlie? You got no job to wear it to. I don't get it. So, RR says, do we really know that Kirk is dead? I mean, you want to get into a philosophical conversation. Do you really even know that you're alive? Is anything around us real? At some point, you know, I don't know. I saw a lot of videos that looked like he got shot and a fountain of blood came out of his neck. I'm pretty confident he's dead. It's a lot of things that we were lied to about, but it looks like he is dead to me. I mean, again, I am open to entertaining anything, no matter how fantastic, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. A lot of people like to just make extraordinary claims and then not provide the evidence. I think discerning viewers recognize that is not what I do. I presented a thesis that is quite contrary to the mainstream story that Cash Plane Ride Patel wants you to believe, but I presented a whole lot of scientifically backed evidence to support it, and nobody can prove me wrong. Thanks for watching, everybody.